Hey guys, we're in a beautiful section of British Columbia on one of my favorite rides here through the forest. We're looking at an awesome electric cargo bike. This is the Momentum Pakyak E+. Momentum is part of the Giant family, and they're the biggest bike manufacturer in the whole world, and includes Liv. So Liv is kind of like women's bikes, Giant is sort of like everything, and then Momentum is kind of this lifestyle. And this cargo bike, it's their first cargo bike. It checks all the boxes. It's kind of what I would expect to see from a company like Giant, and they're teaming up with Yamaha for the drive system. So even though this says SynchDrive Pro, this is actually Yamaha PW-X. It's like a mountain biking motor, and there's a lot on this bike that's kind of borrowed from the downhill mountain biking world. So this thing, it's rated at 250 watts, kind of international standard, but it peaks at 80 newton meters of torque. It's very powerful. 20 mile per hour top speed in Canada. In the US, it's 28 miles per hour speed pedelec. So there are very few cargo bikes that give you that faster kind of high performance for commuters or maybe people who are touring, because this comes with a 500 watt hour battery pack, you know, pretty standard these days, with the option to buy a second battery pack and put it in this box back here. So it's really well protected. The weight on the bike is well distributed, and there's the motor down there, about 6.5 pounds for that, maybe 6.8, 7.2 pounds for the battery. And you know, if you double that here, it doesn't come with the second battery pack. I think it's an extra $1,000 for sort of the interface and the pack there. But the bike is handling really well, and there are a couple reasons for that that I'll get into later. It's an 84-pound bike, as seen here, stock. And it does come with this really nice front rack. The rack is not mounted to the steering. It's not going to impact your steering and feel kind of out of control or dump to the side. It's frame mounted with 4 big bolts, really well done. 2 points there that are welded onto the steer tube. And then this rear rack. Very nice. It's got actually space for 2 child seats. The thing is incredible. They've got a really nice pannier bag system that sits right over this, or some kind of circle around child bars that protect the kids, and a padded seat. They got some footrests here you can mount as well. Very cool. And they just put mounts everywhere. Up on the front rack basket thing, you've got 2 mounts for bottle cages, so you can have your bottles down here. Very accessible, versus right here on the standover section of the bike, where you could kind of bump that if you hopped off real quickly, or kick it every time you get onto the bike. I love that they've got a sticker right here so you don't scratch the paint up. That's a kind of a protective sticker. They don't have a slap guard here, but the chain is really tight. And I was noticing that, like, the double pulley wheels down here, a nice chainring guard, narrow wide tooth pattern on that 46 tooth chainring, 24 teeth on the sprocket back here. This is like an e-bike specific. It's the Shimano Nexus e-bike design 5-speed internally geared hub, so it's extra tough, and it shifts even under load. And that's something that isn't always the case. Like, I've reviewed other bikes where I'm shifting the gears and it's kind of clicking, and it waits until I ease off to engage, which could be a problem if you're carrying a heavy load. Look at all the bosses up here on this fork. There are 6 of them. And then we've also got that fender support right here, and an additional one right here, so it's not rattling around a bunch. You'll notice that the headlight is mounted up here. Points where you steer, not going to collide with that front rack. Alternatively, a lot of cargo bikes mount the headlight up on the rack, but now it doesn't point where you steer. So there's always this trade-off. I feel like this was an excellent compromise. So they just give you a beefier fender. These are aluminum alloy. They're not going to rust if they get scratched. There's only a little bit of steel on the bike, the chain ring to make it extra tough, and then the legs on the kickstand. That is a custom kickstand with kind of that rounded bottom portion there. Real easy to just roll the bike forward off that thing. There's an extra step right here, so when you're putting it up into this kickstand position, you get a little bit of extra leverage. And of course, the spring is sturdy enough that it's not bouncing around a whole lot, making a lot of noise as I ride. So for me, I'm always listening to kind of the stock bike. Of course, when you add some cargo and some bags, you get a little bit more noise, but this thing is quiet. It's really performing quite well. I'm pleasantly surprised. 170 millimeter crank arms, that's kind of standard. And their literature says that this has sort of a narrower Q factor, which means it's not quite as wide, so they're not forcing your legs out. It's more of a traditional bike Q factor. These pedals leave something to be desired for me. They're just sort of the nylon platform with that metal aluminum alloy core. I might get some wider, like better traction, especially if you're riding in the forest and stuff, but otherwise very, very good. Now earlier I mentioned that this thing has some mountain bike specific components that I really like, some hardware that's really been upgraded. And one of those is the brakes. So these are 203 millimeter rotors front and rear with quad piston calipers. So you're just getting extra braking surface, extra power, and a wider, larger surface area that's going to dissipate heat more quickly and just give you a better mechanical advantage over an already fairly small wheel size. I mean, this is 24 by 2.5. It's a good compromise between having a lower attack angle that rolls over the bumps and cracks nicely, but also a small enough wheel that it keeps the whole bike lower. Because it is a heavier bike, you got extra cargo. You want that cargo to be easier to load. You don't have to lift it as high. Great choice. These are upgraded spokes. They've actually got 36 in the rear and 32 up front. They are 13 gauge. You can see there's these reinforcement eyelets so they don't crack the rims. I mean, just all over this bike, it's just like dripping with quality and intentionality is how I feel. So again, both brakes, 203 millimeters, and the rotors are extra thick so they don't warp and bend and stuff, which is not something I see a whole lot on bicycles because most of them aren't as heavy. You might imagine going down a hill with this thing fully loaded. It's like 350 plus pounds between the racks and the rider. Those things can heat up, and you want to be able to stop this thing. Look at these actual brake levers up here. Look at the reservoir. It's extra large, so there's additional mineral oil in there, and you can really just grab, and it performs great. As I've been riding, I've done some no-hands riding, and I've gone off-road with this thing, and between that lowered attack angle, the 2.5-inch width on the tires, you get some cushion. Because of the weight of the bike, you've got this kind of inertia feeling. It's not like super vibration. It's a little bit smoother, kind of a fluid feel. And then check this out. This is a seat post dropper, 30.9 millimeter seat post right here that's mounted, but this section goes up and down. 70 millimeters of adjustability on height, 40 millimeters of travel, so it's actually like a suspension post. So as I've been riding over stuff, in addition to the awesome saddle here, Selle Royale Senza, this thing, it just feels more cushiony. Having that wider handlebar that kind of sweeps back, these ergonomic grips, the tires, the bike feels comfortable. And for me, that's a big deal. I'm going to ride further. I'm going to have a better time if the bike is comfortable. And they've checked all the boxes between the bell up here. We got the seat post dropper. So if you press that, that's what allows you to bring the saddle down a little bit. And that also makes it easier for multiple people in the family to share this bike. This is kind of like a family bike. And maybe it's, you know, the guy's taking it out to do some grocery shopping, grab some stuff. And then later on, the girl's going to do some yoga, or there's another guy who's, you know, going out to see some friends, and maybe he's got the 2 battery packs and going the distance, maybe going camping over the weekend. You could use this thing for kind of light bike packing or even touring. It's really great. So high quality components all the way around. Boost hub spacing up front, 110 millimeter hub spacing, so a little bit wider. And this is a 15 millimeter through axle. No quick release, so you don't have to worry about people tampering with it at the bike rack. It's a 6 millimeter hex. And then back here, I think these are 15 millimeter nuts, 135 millimeter hub spacing, pretty standard. That internally geared hub, love it. Being able to shift at standstill means that if you kind of forget and you have to stop quickly, you can save yourself. You can shift gears, get it back down to that first gear, and make starting much easier for you and the motor. We've got a standard straight steer tube up here, 1.125". It's a rigid fork. I already mentioned all the mounting points, but there's actually additional mounting options all over the bike for like adding a frame lock. And I think in Europe, this bike uses an ABUS key core, so the battery might be matched to the optional additional lock. If you added one aftermarket here, it's not going to be matched, but the battery door and this box are key matched, which is very convenient. It's just nice to have one key or fewer keys when you're dealing with a bunch of cargo and life is happening. I love that they've color matched even this chain guard right here, and it's kind of a heavy duty thing. It wraps all the way around. It might just keep it from getting snagged. The details on this thing, having like an accent color stamped onto that front black basket and having the blacks all be this kind of matte look on these racks and stuff, like that took extra, it was fairly intentional. And the branding and stuff on this it's minimal, it's not overdone. A really cool component that I hadn't seen before is this Creek Viscoset. So it's like a headset here that's designed to kind of want to go back to the center, and it's a little bit slower. It's viscous, so imagine a fluid that like flows versus being really twitchy and quick. By having this Viscoset, they don't have to have one of those springs like a deflopilator, sort of a stabilizing spring up front, which a lot of other cargo bikes have because you've got the extra weight and you don't want that to get out of control. Very cool technology. I haven't seen that before. And coming back down here to the motor, the specs are 250 watt, up to 80 newton meters of torque, 360% support at the highest level of assist. There are 5 of them, and an auto assist mode, which is pretty cool. 170 RPM pedal support, which I've tested up to 140. So the motor keeps up with you even when you're spinning 140 RPM. Most other e-bike systems just go to 100 or 120. So that was really impressive to me. Dealers have told me that the Yamaha drive systems are very reliable, and I believe them. So that's nice to hear. I mean, this is definitely like top end stuff. That is the charging port, and I do want to complain a little bit. The position of it is just really low, and I found that with the wider handlebars, you know, they give you that steering control and they kind of smooth things out, but you can also hit your head on this, and I did hit my head on this brake lever earlier, kind of scratched me, so I don't want that to happen to you. Good news is when you plug in, even if you have the 2 batteries, it fills them both, but it fills them sequentially. So your main battery is going to be cycled more frequently than the spare, and the spare doesn't have this plastic cover on it, and so there's a little bit of like, oh, bummer, you know, if this one wears out faster, you gotta kind of take the cover off and get another battery. But it's a fairly standardized battery, the 500 watt hour, and has Panasonic cells, which is really nice, high quality stuff. I'll take that off in a minute. I just want to point it out, you know, the keyhole is up there. It'd be nice if the charger was maybe on the other side, up high. It's a minor thing, but imagine these pedals get kicked, they could go and kind of bump into that plug port. Nice cover though, really good job on that. So I've got the keys right here. First thing I want to do is open this storage container. Kind of insert here and then twist, open it up. This is another reason that the dropper post is nice, because you can get the saddle clear and you can open the box. You can look in here. You can either store some junk in here, maybe an extra coat or some things that you just don't want people to see. Kind of put it out of sight, out of mind when it's not transparent. So I really like this box and the positioning of it, and the fact that it comes with the bike key to like. What you're seeing here was this optional battery mount. So that's where you could slide in the secondary battery pack and kind of come at an angle, slide it in. Again, the seat kind of stays out of the way, and then you just click it into position. I think once I did that, I would tend to leave it there. It's nice that you can remove it though, to lighten the bike up or to replace it. So we'll lock that. Got a nice little cover so it's not going to get, it just looks nice, and it's not exposed to the elements. And then here's the main lock on the frame. Turn this, and we've got like a 2-step release, so it kind of comes out a little ways. Kind of reminds me of the Bosch Power 2 battery a little bit. So this is a safety step here, and then for the rest of the way you just kind of wiggle it up and down, and it comes out nice and smooth. About 7.2 pounds on this thing, just about 500 watt hours, which is pretty good. 36 volt. It's even got a little kind of light up charge level indicator, 5 dots, 20% increments. Very nice. You can see that plastic shield that I was talking about. It's plastic, and the rest of the frame is aluminum alloy, so hopefully the paint job on this is good enough to hold up and it's not going to fade and look different. But I think the side mount is also nice because it doesn't require quite as much balance and dexterity as the bottom mount designs, and it just clicks right in. You don't even have to have the keys in. I love that. Sometimes I've complained about other systems, you have to like unlock it, and it's a spring lock as you put the battery in, and it's from the bottom. So much going on. And this bike would still be easy because it's got the nice big sturdy kickstand, but the side mount is I'm a big fan of that. If you did want to upgrade and get the second battery pack, I think it's like $1,000 USD, and it includes the mount and the pack itself. And while we're on the topic of batteries, I want to mention that battery care, if you leave this in a cool, dry location, that's going to be good for the pack. These are Panasonic cells. They're some of the best, so they're rated for long life. If you kind of keep it charged between 20 and 80%, that's best for it. If you know you're not going to use it for a while, about half charged is good. So it's a little bit concerning to me that this drains one and then it goes on to the second pack instead of draining in parallel. because one is going to get more cycles, which is going to lower its capacity over time, and it's going to take it all the way down versus kind of balancing them. So for me, that's an area of possible improvement. The other area that's a bit of a trade-off here is this huge charger. I mean, it's like 3.5 pounds. I didn't even bring the wall plug because there was just so much in my backpack. Nice plug interface here. It's proprietary and it's kind of rubberized, so when I mentioned that it could get kicked down there, it's like, well, at least it's fairly durable. Let's take it down here and just kind of line it up like this. There we go. So at least the wire points down like that, and you have plenty of space to move this over towards the wall. It's a fast charger. It says it can fill the bike in like 4.5 hours. It's 6 amps, but again, at 3.5 pounds and being longer than most of the other chargers I've seen and wider. I mean, this thing is thick. This is heavy duty. For a 500 watt-hour battery, it's kind of overkill, but I can see why they went with 6 amps when you've got the double. That way you can get this thing and you can keep it on the road. Maybe it's like a work thing at a work site. People are using it all the time. Nice to have a fast charger like that. And then there's this. Okay, so this comes with the charger. It's a dongle adapter that allows you to plug directly in the battery, because the interface on the base of the battery is different than this one. That means you kind of always got to keep track of this. You don't want to lose it, and they've come up with a pretty good solution here. It's like this plastic coupler thing. You kind of wrap the cable around like that, and then you can clip it to the wire. So see, it's all together. I'm glad that they're trying. You know, that's better than nothing. It's something that I've mentioned in the past with the Yamaha chargers. Now the last step is to look at the display panel. I really like this thing. Even though it's just 1.5 inches wide for the LCD, it's just so compact. You know, it's easy to reach with your fingers. It's a little confusing for me at first because this is walk mode and info, which changes the readouts. Plus and minus are down here, and I'm just so used to them being up here from most of the other manufacturers. I actually think that's a really natural place. Most people get used to it. But there's a lot at your disposal here. You got the 2 or 3 finger brake levers, those awesome brakes, the dropper seat post back here, plus minus to change assist levels, walk, info, power, and lights. They packed a lot into this thing, but that's not all. They also have a USB-C charging port right over here, okay? So you could put your smartphone here, or you could charge a speaker, or all kinds of things. Put some Christmas lights on your bike if you wanted to. This thing is awesome. It's a powerhouse. I'm really impressed with it, and it just leaves the cockpit fairly clean. They also have good wire management, all these little clips and stuff, so you can kind of clip the wires together and try to detangle things a little bit. It is purpose built, and only a couple things on the bike are steel. It's like the chain ring, which is like extra sturdy so that those teeth don't strip, and then the lower portion of the kickstand. Steel just tends to be very, very tough and sturdy. Everything else is aluminum alloy, so if it gets scratched, you're not going to end up with rust. So let's go ahead and boot this thing up. If we hold the power button for a second, we get that nice giant readout. This is full color, and it's on speed right now, so it stays where you left it. I was cycling through the different menus earlier, hoping to test that. We can change the backlight brightness by pressing that light button for a second, so we just went brighter. It's nice that you have a dim setting, because sometimes you're in the woods or it's evening and you don't want to ruin your night vision with like a super bright display. I like how the background is black. It's not like a white, you know, flashlight in your face. We got the headlight icon on, so this is a chance to see that supernova in action. Really nice, really bright. It's like 550 lumens on that thing. And then the rear light, well protected. See, it doesn't protrude past the frame here, this rack. It's not going to get kicked out of position or cracked as easily. The rack extends much further back to protect it, but it's still fairly visible from many angles, and it's got 2 LEDs, so it's a little bit brighter, and it's got that reflective portion right there. I tend to ride with helmets that have like a light built in or a backpack with a blinker on them, just to be safe. You're not super low on this bike, but it is slightly lower because of the smaller wheel diameter. Coming back up to the display here, I love that they've got a battery infographic as well as a percentage. So it says 83%. That's way better than just like 5 dots or even 10 dots. It's much more precise, but that's not all. We can go from the current speed, so how fast we're riding right now. If we press I, we get range. So depending on the level of assist you're in, you're getting great feedback about how far you can go before you need to plug this thing in. And that's great, because a heavy pound, 84-pound bike, it'd be a bummer if you had to pedal at home. The low gear isn't quite as low as I find myself wanting at times in the lower levels of assist. So the gearing, again, getting stranded without battery it'd be some work. I'm gonna arrow up a little bit here So we're at active. Let's take it all the way down to our eco off. So you can ride it with the bike off and just use the lights and charge your phone or whatever if you want to. The lowest level eco says 72 miles. I can quickly go all the way up to power, 30 miles. So that's pretty close to what they estimated on the website. If I hold plus or minus, it goes from these 5 standard modes to automatic. So it's automatically sensing and giving me dynamic feedback and support that just takes all the guesswork out of it. You just switch the gears and the bike does the rest, depending on kind of how hard you're pedaling, how fast you're pedaling, and how fast the bike is moving, like the wheel speed. So I love that. Great job. Some of the other menus here are distance, so kind of how far you've gone, trip time, average speed, max speed, heart rate. It has Bluetooth, so you can connect a heart rate monitor if you want. Cadence up to 170 RPM. It's super fast, and I tested. I was able to pedal 140 RPM, and the motor was still keeping up with me. That's as fast as I could pedal, so you're not going to lose support. I love that. Odometer. We're back to speed. So a minute ago we saw, the heart rate monitor. There's also a RideControl app for this, so smartphone for Android or iOS, and you can adjust these settings even further, and you can use GPS, and you can measure more things about the bike. The cool thing about apps is they get better over time. So I don't want to go too much into it, but it's actually the same app that they use for their giant bikes. So they said one app to rule them all. So it's nice that they aren't trying to make like a Momentum specific app. They already have something that works, and you're part of this great family of e-bikes that goes way back. They've high quality stuff. They're always getting better. This is one of my favorite giant or Momentum or Live bikes that I've seen. It just seems super well thought out. So that's kind of it with the display. We could hold the walk mode button, and the bike's going to take off on us, and that makes it easier to climb up stairs and things. And yeah, I think that's about it. Maybe we should just hop on and do a ride test. It's pretty cool. It seems like there's 3 levels. There's like dark, medium, and super bright. I like that because it's sunny out right now. So even though I'm in Canada, this isn't the speed pedelec class 3 version of the bike, I've still been able to go pretty fast down some of these hills around here. I gotten up to 27.2 miles per hour. It really makes me appreciate that viscous headset, because I haven't had any speed wobble, and the frame just feels super stiff. And a lot of times I'm trying to celebrate that with cargo bikes, but I'm like, that's just part of the deal. It's a cargo bike. Or you've got, the mid-step frame. You're kind of having to trade approachability for a little bit of frame stiffness. I feel like they didn't compromise at all here. This Momentum bike, it feels really good. And so I just wanted to compliment that again and maybe try to demonstrate it. I'm on a big hill here, and I'm only using one hand to brake, but it's still very doable. I'm braking with the front wheel too, and a little bit of shimmer there at the end, but that is just fantastic, all things considered. And I think it comes back to the thicker rotor and just the tires and the frame stiffness and that headset. It's really working well together. Here I can just step on the kickstand, and it's got that nice extra, almost like a foot press thing on the left side. Very cool. And then just roll it forward. Hop right on. No problem. One thing you want to be careful of is just that lower center point because of the longer wheelbase. I've measured the wheelbase, and I talk about some of that back at the site in the stats. Yeah, I took this thing across some curbs and roots, and just, the float and the comfort, stability is all really good for a cargo bike. Sometimes because they're longer and they have the smaller wheel diameter, you can get center strikes here, like the roots, or if you're going off a curb, I had that a little bit when I was climbing some stairs that were tight earlier, but otherwise, I mean, this is really above average for this type of bike to perform so well in so many conditions. Go ahead and take off here a little bit, nice and smooth. So even though I'm up in the higher levels of assist, it's very dynamic. It's not like overwhelming me, but as soon as I apply a little more pressure, it really takes off. I also really like that I can shift at standstill. So sometimes you get going, you're in a high gear and you have to stop unexpectedly. It's nice that you can just twist this thing and get it into a lower gear and then start again, and it clicks right into place. So it's heavy duty. It's an e-bike specific internally geared hub. A lot of the kind of the cheaper hubs that are just for regular bikes, you know, it's not rated for that 80 Newton meters of torque, and for the weight of this bike, they won't shift under a load. You twist this and then you hear like, and it's sort of a self-protection mechanism. It's like, I'm not going to shift until you ease off a little bit, and I'm not going to try to grind the gears and hurt myself. So I like that they beef this bike up. I mean, all across the bike, whether it's the suspension seat post design, whether it's the thicker and super wide disc brake rotors there, the quad piston calipers, the larger reservoir up here. It's a fantastic bike, and honestly, I mean, I see a lot of expensive bikes, and I know $5,500 is a lot of money, but to me that feels like a good value. I was surprised it wasn't too much more than that, especially with the option for dual battery and all the great racks and the support. I mean, you can go into a dealer and you can stand over this thing. I think a lot of the Giant and Liv dealers are going to carry this, or they should be able to get one in for you. And then this being a speed pedelec, it's pretty incredible. I was really happy and excited when I saw this bike, and it's been fun playing with it and taking it off-road a little bit. I hope this helps you guys out. I try my best to be thorough, and I have all the specs and details measured by hand by me back at ElectricBikeReview.com. There's also a cool comparison tool, so you can look at some of the cheaper cargo bikes and see if you need something like this. But if you want something that's faster in the United States, that's going to last a long time. And there's also a forum back at the website, so you can ask other people their opinion. You know, you don't have to take my word for it. And if you get one of these bikes, maybe there's some racks or bags that work really well that people are talking about, and I invite you to discuss and share. I love you guys. I hope you have fun out there with your friends and families. That's what it's all about, and we'll see you in the next one. Ride safe.